Welcome back, everybody. Special tribute edition today. I've got to go back home. This couldn't be my home. Voice of the man called Bob Andy. It's my second video of this week. I don't usually do this. There's special circumstances. The man called Bob Andy passed away today as of this recording, March 27th, 2020. One of the greatest singer-songwriters Jamaica has ever produced, along with some other reggae artists. It's been a very bad week. And on top of the news going around, as conditions worsen, we're losing our precious artists that have brought so much joy into our lives, and Bob Andy was definitely one of them. First introduced to me through that song, his first big hit, released in 1967, The Days of Rocksteady. Bob Andy with I've Got to Go Back Home, with its striking lyrics of can't get no job to get paid, can't get no food to eat, and I've got to find someplace else or I will kill myself. No one else in Jamaican music would write lyrics like that. Bob Andy never really resorted to stringing together folk sayings or quotes from the Bible or slogans. He was very much a distinctive songwriter, as well as a very heartfelt, very personal singer. His songs often create the character of a man, often in difficult circumstances, and he inhabits that character and fleshes out that character's story in his songs. A true songwriter, and that is one of his greatest and his first big hit. Bob Andy, born 1944, Kingston, Jamaica, had a very rough childhood, rough upbringing, was sent to live with his grandmother at the age of 7, who was apparently the only adult that he had parental love from until her death. He was sent back to live with his mother. He was subject to a lot of beatings and abuse. He would run away from home. At one point, he made up a story about his mother being dead so that he could be sent to a children's home. He actually went to court to be made a ward of the state and finally got his wish to be sent to a children's home. It was there he started learning to play the piano, self-taught, as well as singing in the church choir. Around this time, in his teens, he also met Tyrone Evans, fellow aspiring singer. Together, along with Howard Barnett, they formed a group called the Paragons. This is in the 1960s. Bob Andy, his real name was Keith Anderson, by the way. He was about 16, 17 at this time, formed the first version of the Paragons vocal group, which he kind of envisioned as a Jamaican version of the Drifters. He was very influenced by all those American R&B stars, Sam Cooke, and the likes of the Drifters, the Coasters, those kind of groups. Formed the Paragons. Eventually they brought in John Holt as lead singer. Bob Andy couldn't really get on with John Holt, who he described as arrogant. He eventually made the decision to leave the Paragons. He was also frustrated over doing a lot of the work in the group, arranging the songs, and so on. So he decided to strike out on his own. Ended up at Cox & Dodd's Studio One label, where he began writing songs and selling records, and eventually moved into promoting himself as a performer. That song, I've Got to Go Back Home, released in 1967, was his first big hit, but many others followed, most notably songs like Feeling Soul, Studio One, the classic Studio One label, Bob Andy, as well as Unchained, Too Experienced, many others. This was in the late 1960s, going into the very early 70s. The feeling of black pride, black consciousness is going around in the U.S., also spreading in Jamaica. He reflected those those sentiments in his lyrics, which often, as well as presenting personal viewpoints usually of a man in struggle, in crisis, it also had lyrics of social consciousness, social justice, as on My Time. These were finally collected together on one of these seminal LPs from the Studio One label. Bob Andy had left the label by the point this LP had appeared, kind of a common circumstance. They felt unappreciated, unrewarded for their work at Studio One, but Cox and Dodd, founder of the label, finally collected these together in the early 70s as Bob Andy's Songbook, one of the crown jewels of the Studio One catalog, and a very rich period in its history, but definitely one of the crown jewels. It's a very difficult video for me to do today. It's with a heavy heart, for sure. It's on the Red Ribbon Studio One label, and the great Bob Andy right there. This collects songs like My Time, Desperate Lover, Too Experienced, which was later on covered by Barrington Levy several years later. I've Got to Go Back Home right there. I'll Stay in My Lonely Arms, Unchained, Feeling Soul, just showed the 7-inch of that. Crime Don't Pay was one of the very first songs he ever wrote. As he developed as a songwriter, he was listening to other records that Cox and Dodd would give him and learning how to formulate lyrics to the songs. Eventually formed a duo with Marcia Griffiths, another young singer associated with Studio One. They formed a singing duo as Bob and Marcia, as well as a romantic partnership. They had hits like Always Together for Studio One, but eventually moved on to Harry Johnson's Harry J label. It was there they had a huge hit with Young, Gifted and Black, which was taken to the UK, where it was overdubbed with strings, which was kind of the fashion in that time, to kind of sweeten the sound of these Jamaican records for the UK audience, where it became a massive hit for Bob and Marcia. Continued his recording career. He heavily promoted that song in the UK, but grew frustrated, again with the lack of reward for the hit song, and returned to Jamaica. Continued recording with Bob as Bob and Marcia. They had a further hit with a cover of Crispian St. Peter's Pied Piper. This is on the Harry J label. But eventually left Harry Johnson's label. Recorded the classic Fire Burning in the early 1970s, with its very distinctive lyrics of prophecy, as he talks about the haves will want to be in the shoes of the haves-nots, but if the sign is on your door, you will be safe for sure. And this features a brutal dub instrumental mix on the B-side with Dadawa, Burning Drums. Feeling Soul, or Fire Burning, sorry, was later covered by Marcia Griffiths. Much later, for the Penthouse label in the 1990s, became a hit all over again. Many of Bob Andy's songs would be covered by other artists, so regarded was he as a songwriter for those classic songs. Some of the rhythm tracks, again, would become standards to be used and reused over and over again by other artists, and become known as by the titles of their original Bob Andy versions. Further work continued. By now, Marcia Griffiths had joined up with Bob Marley's I-Threes backing singers, with Rita Marley and Judy Mowat as the I-Threes, and pursued her own solo career, initially with female producer Sonia Pottinger. Toward the later part of the 1970s, Sonia Pottinger also reached out to bring Bob Andy into her fold of artists, where he recorded the Lots of Love and I LP. For Sonia Pottinger. Again, deeply personal songs, range of styles. It's for Sonia Pottinger's High Note label. The great Bob Andy, as well as updating his own Unchained on that in a new version with the late 70s rockers style of reggae with the Revolutionaries at Channel 1, Sonia Pottinger. Around 1978, he also appeared in a film called Children of Babylon. At this time, he started to develop an interest in acting, in drama and movies, as he grew frustrated and disenchanted with the music business, with his records not being played. The brutal war in the city appeared on this Black Echoes compilation from Dennis Brown's DEB label. Bob Andy's War in the City, again, deeply socially relevant song, DEB label. But it would be, his recording career would begin to get more intermittent. The Retrospective collection appeared in the early 1980s from the Heartbeat label. Bob Andy's Retrospective, collecting some kind of self-productions, little-known songs on the US Heartbeat label. The great songwriter Bob Andy. And he would continue recording through the 80s and 90s, but sporadically. In 2006, he was awarded the Order of Distinction, a very high honor in Jamaica, and passed away this morning. The news came after being in ill health. It's kind of a shock, personal shock to me, as I had just picked up that Lots of Love and I LP fairly recently. Had been sort of mulling about on some kind of a video tribute to him at some point. Wasn't quite ready to do it. Wasn't kind of planning to get around to it anytime soon, but this has kind of forced my hand into doing a tribute to the man called Bob Andy, one of the great singer-songwriters of Jamaica. And somebody else had actually posted that same record on Instagram, and I made some comment on their post, and Bob Andy personally came on and liked my comment. That was only a week or two ago, and today he's gone. So, very sad days on top of everything else that's going on in the world. We are losing our artists that have enriched our lives in so many ways. I've kind of been called on the carpet in the comments of some of my videos, like my last one, for some of the other artists who passed away that I haven't done tribute videos to them. I can't do video tribute to every single artist who passes away, but I could not let Bob Andy's passing go. So I'm going to also mention that the singer Derek Lara had passed away a little while ago. He had started out as a drummer in Jamaica's 7th Extension Band. I just remembered today that I do have a single by them on the Zodiac label, credited as Bunny Lara. Started out as a drummer before switching to singing, which he does on this side, called What We Need Is Love. Had kind of a high falsetto voice. He had a further hit in 1980, around 1980, for the Joe Gibbs label, with a song called Don't Stop Till You Get Enough, in kind of a disco reggae style, with the great titled Trinity DJ side, and even then Keep Going. I always love that title. Kind of one of those punning, jokey Joe Gibbs 12-inch titles on the version side, as well as having a lovers rock tune called with a cover of Barbara Lewis's Hello Stranger. This is a 10-inch single actually on the Pama label out of the UK. A very unusual one. I found this a few years ago locally. Kind of unusual to find something on the Pama label from the early 80s, 1982. Very much in a UK lovers rock style. Nice tune. But the Pama label was kind of associated in the late 60s, early 70s. Went out of business for a while. So kind of was surprised to find that one locally several years ago. As well as that, Derek Lara had his own career, did a few LPs. I have this one with him with Beres Hammond, who was on track to becoming a major reggae star in the 1990s and early 2000s, and on to today, still active. This is an LP, a joint LP he did, Derek Lara and the great Beres Hammond, who had been lead singer of Zap Pow. This is for Richard Bell's Star Trail label from 1991, early 1990s. So that was Derek Lara, passed away recently from lung cancer, as I understand it. And in addition to losing Bob Andy, we also lost Apple Gabriel, one of the singers from Roots Harmony trio Israel Vibration, with their iconic The Same Song album. Apple Gabriel passed away. Israel Vibration was a harmony trio, top-ranking label out of Jamaica. Classic seminal album from them, The Same Song. They were actually polio sufferers. They all walked with crutches. They had met in a rehabilitation center as youngsters, formed a group, and became singers. had many hits, many albums over the years. Apple Gabriel left the group and went solo in the late 1990s, had been in hard times recently with some health issues and bouts of homelessness, and has passed away today as well. And if all that news wasn't bad enough, Delroy Washington also passed away. UK reggae singer, songwriter. I was introduced to him through his LPs Isis and Rasta very early on. These appeared in the late 1970s on Virgin Records, one of the very first artists signed to the Virgin label in the UK. He was also friends with Bob Marley, and by his account co-wrote some songs with Bob Marley, including Kinky Reggae, Soja Say, Midnight Ravers. Was very close friends with Marley. He claims Bob Marley introduced him to ganja, so was definitely moving around in those circles. And these are very unique UK reggae albums with kind of a range of influences. I've often thought about picking these up on vinyl. Definitely enjoyed these for many years. So that has been my tribute to the fallen reggae legends. Kind of, I don't enjoy doing these videos, kind of don't want my channel turning into this death and that death, but sometimes you gotta pay tribute to these artists, and Bob Andy was definitely one of them. One of the great singer-songwriters of Jamaica. Rest in peace, rest in power, the great Bob Andy. Thank you guys, cheers.